Hey everyone, this is Karen. Welcome back to Naturally with Karen. I'm inside today. It's beginning to be fall. See myself here. And I put together a really nice live stream because I have so many women clients that are now coming and they're talking about pituitary masses, pituitary adenoma, thyroid issues, hormone issues, fertility issues, gynecological, and intracranial pressure. So you see all these big words in the title, but I'm going to break it down really simply, not because anyone's a dummy, but because I just think things should be described really simply, and what I'm going to share is that for 35 years, I've been doing coaching, and 35 years ago, I didn't know, even a quarter as much as I do today, because I'm constantly learning. A client may call me for something, 10 years ago and say she had myasthenia gravis. And I'm like, what's that? And we figured it out. It was thymus. And in a couple of sessions, she actually completely reversed it. She's in Wisconsin. Man with stage 3 kidney disease. I'd never worked with that before. And so no matter what you call it, we all have a body, and the body has the same principle design, or it's geared the same way, however you're comfortable stating that. So a human body, we do have different blood types, different things. We have distinguishing things that make us different. Like you lived on different soil and you had different stressors and you had different vaccinations and you had different vitamins and you had different food. And, you have different sets of circumstances coming from your ancestors, but the basic human body is the same. So looking at what we do to help the human body to bring itself back into balance, to regenerate, like a generator produces energy, to regenerate you is different than treating you. So I want to go over a couple things today. I started off with left brain. If you're like, what the heck is that all about, right? I've read so much information about brain lateralization. When the two hemispheres that are connected but separate aren't able to cross-reference and communicate with each other, you get something that is more of a brain lateralization, meaning that a person's kind of way more over on this side than this side, right? You might have heard people talking about, well, right brain people are really artistic and creative, and they're the authors and poets and musicians and artists and all that. And left brain people are really the engineers, the doctors, and the scientists, and the real analytical people that need everything to be super hardcore, empirical, double-blind studied, tangible facts. And the happy place is in the middle of being able to go to the left, to the right. I think there's like a song about to the left, to the right. Anyway, your pituitary is that gland that sits almost in the middle of your head. It's like the size and shape of a little pea, and it's responsible for pumping out one of your thyroid hormones that is usually tested, called TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay. What else do I have here? Intracranial pressure. When a person starts getting some of these symptoms, and there is something going on with the pituitary and the HPA axis, and you are getting more left brain, which can be a facet. It can be other things, but left brain can be a facet of some of this, especially if your zinc levels are super, super high and your copper levels are really down low on your hair test. So I'm going to go over all this, but this is just kind of like a glossing over, okay? So I have a couple of clients right now that I meet with through video coaching. And after they fill out the wellness form on my website, I get a great amount of information, because my form has been evolving for 17 years now. And I've got lots and lots and lots of little boxes that you can fill out, so that I'm not charging you for that time for me to take in and digest about you. So I get a good amount of information, a good sense about you. I have you fill that out before our appointments get started. And I really take the time, sometimes an hour, half an hour to an hour before our scheduled time, even, again, kind of going through, especially if you've done tissue mineral analysis, right? Now, this is one that I've been given permission to share. And in the red box are the toxic elements. This person who I wanted to have tested for many years and finally agreed to this year, we found out, the root of some of his problems. So I can look at this 10 to 12 page report that tells you everything. And if you're thinking, well, I looked on Quack Watch and hair testing just seems to be something really kind of quack. Well, go through PubMed and, type in their hair tissue analysis and find out that it's actually really substantially respected when it comes to cancer and, figuring out things about disease. So we take a small sample of your tissue, which is your hair. If it's not chemically processed, we do scalp hair. If it is, we can do pubic hair. For the guys, we can do chest hair, ancillary hair. We can also do fingernail clippings, which we've done for some of my clients with hemochromatosis, where, they lose all the hair on their body, their arms, their pubic hair, their scalp hair. And that's people with really sky-high iron. The last time I did a hair test like that, the lady actually was anemic. And what the doctors were doing for her, which is very similar in Ayurvedic medicine, is they were asking her to just go donate blood to bring down her, iron levels in her body. So intracranial pressure, I have a couple of clients right now, the face gets very swollen, the eyesight starts getting really bad, and they start getting really hot and cold or very hot all the time. And they can maybe get some scalp issues like psoriasis or inflammation on the scalp, itchy scalp, things like that, because there's so much heat in the head because the body's trying to figure out, what am I going to do? I've got this problem. So, and let's see, what else we're talking. The HPA Axis stands for, it's in a lot of medical literature, and HPA stands for your hypothalamus, one of the 3 glands in your head, your pituitary, they're right next to each other, and your adrenals. So the hypothalamus also has adrenaline cells, which are attached to some of the neurons. And the hypothalamus, through the pituitary, signals down to the adrenals. And they've called this, medical literature has called this an axis that we know of. Hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals. So this is why every single person who, like 80% of the people that I test, and it shows their metabolic level, slow, 1, 2, 3, or 4, fast, 1, 2, 3, or 4, typically are parasympathetic dominant and typically have deficient adrenal and thyroid power in their body. So that's all about the HPA axis. And the last one is about your thyroid connection. I authored a book called Detox and Heal Your Thyroid. And that's because I really feel that the majority of people would do a lot better if they took it upon themselves to heal themselves. And they had the book that showed them how to do it, or another resource. And they were able to do that instead of eventually losing their thyroid through a thyroidectomy, having it cut out or radiated out, or having to be on a synthetic or bioidentical compound hormone for years when maybe they could avert that. So let's get started. Left brain, like I said, if you're lateralized, it just means that either something happened during development or typically something's going on with your trace elements. Everything over here in the blue category, from calcium and magnesium and phosphorus and potassium and sodium and all the way down to sulfur and selenium, silica, they've all got to be balanced, right? So, for example, this person has a copper level of a 1.2. Now, if you've heard of the copper top batteries and the Duracells being better and stuff like that, that's kind of like my little slogan for this, because what I've learned from Dr. Watts is that we function better if our copper is at least a 2.5. When we have lots and lots of extra copper, we're not going to be left brain typically. We're going to end up being more emotionally effused and more prone to crying and being super oversensitive and maybe be called bipolar or schizophrenic or psychotic because our copper levels are high. And I've worked with women that got a copper IUD and they were already high in copper. And so what did it do? But it just pushed them over the edge. So I want to see, especially for someone like this, who's dealing with these toxic elements like arsenic and cadmium that were through the roof on this test, is I want to get their copper levels up a little bit, and I'm going to do that through a plant-based diet. Instead of me saying go out and buy copper and start taking it, which I need to do in a few instances, but very rarely, because what I like to do is make food the medicine. So if someone's been living on energy drinks and they've been going through a lot of addiction because they're in this kind of pain and they didn't know why and they found it really difficult to stop themselves, well, why not, bump it up so that you do regular coaching, and by that, nothing fancy. It's just like, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? I had a pumpkin pie smoothie today, and I'll kind of tell you what that was. That sounds good. Or I would do a chocolate pumpkin smoothie or something like that. And so I help with finding really simple ways to get that medicine in through your food. So that's one of the big things that we do. So left brain is typically going to be someone whose zinc level is going to be a lot higher, like right over here. If the zinc level is higher than the copper level, that's a particular ratio. So if they're not kind of neck and neck and helping each other, push and pull, call and response, then there's going to be problems. So now the copper level is driven way down, and as the zinc levels go super high, a person's going to be more likely to be like, more flat affected, more not so curious, more like I've got to only have the facts, only if you've got a credential, only, and in case you hadn't noticed, I've noticed the world is becoming very, very left brain dominant and very lateralized. And it's kind of scary because it kind of puts creativity at risk and imagination. And that's kind of what a lot of these movements like Waldorf schools and everything else, whether you like them or not, I mean, it's like we need to have something more than barf back education and teach to the test. Children need to get imaginative and think about solutions for the future and think about having a joyful life and, get out and move their bodies and be able to imagine things, because that's power. So we don't want a world full of left brain people. And what this all has to do with each other is that if those zinc levels are really high, and I've done this kind of testing for several years now, where my clients, 4 men I've worked with Parkinson's disease, their zinc levels were really, really, really high. They had elevated levels of aluminum and mercury, definitely. And so does that affect the neurons? Does that affect the gut? Does that affect the person's depression levels and their fatigue? And eventually the gait starts to get kind of, real choppy, meaning that, the arms don't swing like they normally would when we're walking along. And so lots of things with Parkinson's really is swinging a person into left brain. These are people that become really, really super focused on their work. They become really type A people. Okay, most of the time, maybe not all the time, but most of the time, you might be the one person watching and say, well, not my family. My family's not like that. And they've got Parkinson's. Well, Parkinson's also comes from a lot of mercury exposure. So, for example, you could have your family could have been someone who was working inside of a paper mill for a long time. So, moving right along, the pituitary gland, we're seeing a lot more, and I'm experiencing a lot more folks with pituitary adenoma. So how did that happen? Let's just say that as a small child, you had low body temperature and low blood pressure, and your reflexes were kind of slow, but the doctor's like, nah, that's okay, not such a big deal, just like in my other live stream. Your thyroid was slow to begin with. When your thyroid is slow, you start to produce a lot of fluid accumulation, and you're certainly going to also produce it everywhere in your body, including in your brain. So we're getting fluid accumulation around the heart, in places in the brain, pressure that drives inflammation up to the eye orbit and starts causing our young children into eyeglasses, right? Pushing them into eyeglasses. And it starts to create more cysts in the body. You should know, you probably have heard of PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOD, polycystic ovarian disease. You've heard about fibroids, which are usually always benign, non-cancerous tumors or globs, masses in the uterus. And there's 3 different types, at least. There could be more by now. So your pituitary is really important. It's got to be able to be in your brain and not, pressured out with all this fluid accumulation in your head, which is going to produce the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is the intracranial pressure. So you can go in and get a lumbar puncture into your spine, and you can have them analyze your CNS fluid, your central nervous system fluid, and check it for autoantibodies and do all those things. Or if your doctor agrees that you don't have to have the test right now, start coaching with me, work with me and your doctor, and let's sit down and I'll show you where you're not starving. We'll get your hair test done right away. It's going to take several weeks, so let's get on it right now. I've got to mail you a kit. You've got to mail back the hair sample, the tissue sample. I've got to mail the tissue sample to Texas. And from there, it's about 2 weeks, depending on how, because they're doing about 400 tests a day on average. What's that going to do? It's going to show me what your zinc levels are. It's going to show me what kind of toxic elements we're dealing with, just like this one. The red is the danger zone. The blue is the nutritional elements. We see some of the ratios and some of the zirconium and titaniums and lithiums and all the others down here that are not quite as crucial in terms of absolutely required trace elements. Lots over here. Over here, we're going to see supplements that are recommended pursuant to statistical and clinical research. Okay. And if we keep going, there's going to be a trend section, which is going to kind of show what's predicted in terms of, what kind under statistical and clinical research based on all of the numbers on your entire report. This is super important. These trends are going to show you what's going on with you or what's predicted to come up. So don't be scared. Mine had things too. And I've been health coaching for 35 years. So I said, I'm very thankful to have those. They're not scaring me. One of mine was calculus, which is, think about calcifications or stones, gallstones, kidney stones, whatever. So I was like, ooh, I got to get on it. But I was really, really pleasantly surprised many years ago to realize that that's just not from poor eating and poor habits. It also had to do with these trace elements. You're making gallstones and kidney stones has a lot to do with what's going to show up on this report. Okay, so we covered left brain, pituitary, and the intracranial pressure, where you start to see maybe one side of the face. Women, sometimes this can show up more when it's PMS time, when it's getting closer to the period or the moon cycle, because the body starts to retain a lot more water than even usual and go down a little bit more. So intracranial pressure. So if your doctor says, hey, you can go ahead and do a few things that you want to do with your coach over there, and we can schedule that out for 6 weeks from now. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like we have to get that test done tomorrow. Let's see what we can do. Let's get your hair test done. Let me show you a couple tips and tricks based on that and your wellness forum on my website at naturallywithkaren.com under coaching. And let's get you started so we can really get some results for you, because then you can go in and chances are they can say, whoa, night and day difference. You're not swollen at all. The swelling is coming down. This is fantastic. We want to keep you as well as possible. Okay. So that's intracranial pressure. It's a big deal. I just had 2 clients in the less than 3 weeks come into my shop and meet in person for body work that had the same situation going on, only they had headaches, they had swelling, they had diminished vision, and they had hot and cold feelings. So it's going to be a little bit different for everyone, but it's all the same thing. Years and years and years of building up fluid accumulation from a slow thyroid and from insufficient thyroid and adrenal function, missing certain trace elements. Okay? Your HPA axis and thyroid, the last 2. HPA axis is talked about extensively in medical literature. The H is your hypothalamus. The P is your pituitary. We already talked about that. The A is your adrenal glands, 2 of the primary 7 glands that sit on top of your kidneys. Those are known as the fight or flight. They produce adrenaline and they turn it into a hormone, which you may know as epinephrine and norepinephrine, right? Amongst others. There's others too. But we won't go into a whole lecture on adrenal glands. So your HPA axis means that your hypothalamus, out of the 3 glands, the 1 gland out of the 3 in your head that's next to that pituitary and then pineal, right? 3 glands, has got to be using those neurons with adrenaline to signal down to the adrenals, and it's got to cooperate on an axis level. So if your hypothalamus is not able to signal to the adrenals and vice versa, and the thyroid isn't functioning well, you're not going to have energy. When you stop having energy and you've got lethargy and fatigue, right? Your hair starts to thin. You can't sleep at night, especially for some reason. My men clients, the males, they're like, they've got horrible experiences that they share with me about insomnia, type 1 and type 2. There's 2 different types of, I can't get sleep that I need. Type 1 and type 2 have to do with, I can't get to sleep at all. Like I just toss and turn, and I toss and turn, and I can't sleep at all. And the other type is, I get to sleep just fine, but my gosh, I wake up every night at like this time, or I wake up 3 or 4 times, or, I have clients that say, I have to go sleep in a chair out in the front room. I mean, that's no fun. So that's what's going on there. So all of these things are connected on the last thing I want to talk about, which is your thyroid. And if you don't know, your thyroid is located right here in your throat. It's like the shape of a butterfly. It's typically identified with your throat chakra energy, which is one of the major energy centers or the portals in your body. It's typically associated with the color blue. And it has everything to do with the power that you have to speak your truth, or to use your voice, to use your power through your voice. The mind-body causative for thyroid issues, as I have in my book, Detox and Heal Your Thyroid, which you can buy as a digital copy on naturallywithkaren.com, or you could buy it on Amazon, or you could probably buy it used somewhere. There's lots of them out there. Is that you're under humiliation. Do you feel humiliated? Who wouldn't feel humiliated in the world today with an ever-escalating cost of living, with the way the shelter crisis is going, with so many people not having a shelter, not being able to afford a shelter, with ever-escalating property tax and house insurance and renter's insurance and moving trucks and woo! I mean, it's a lot. So I'm sitting in a house right now and I'm really thankful, but I'm ever aware of the fact, because I've not always had this luxury, that many people right now are not, and I care about them just as much. Okay? So that was the mind-body causative about thyroid, was humiliation. Okay? The neck is an area where people could be choked, could be hung, could be, right? It's, if you just kind of do a real overtone, think of this as kind of like the CPU, right? The computer. And this is like the vehicle, with the 4 arms and legs, like a car with its 4 tires. This would be like the central branch of government, right? That connects the computer and the vehicle. It just the most rudimentary ways. I know you'll understand what I'm saying. So all in all, helping our people to avoid being so predominantly left brain, avoiding pituitary issues like pituitary adenomas and mass and cysts next to your pituitary, which by my estimations, based on what I'm working with, seeing and reading, I'm going to guess about 40% of people. And I think it's only going to be worsened by many of the higher levels of radiation coming in by 2020. Okay. Intracranial pressure. I'm seeing this more in my women clients that are saying, I've got this pressure in my head, and the doctor needs to check me for MS and rule out a brain tumor with an MRI with contrast. And we're going to get all these tests. And meanwhile, the person has gone through test after test after test after test after test, because the responsible thing that we've always known is to be evidence-based and to rule out what it is and to make sure what's going on. But what if, just what if, it's a lot more simple than we're making it out to be? What if there's a potential for someone very qualified to say, hey, why don't we go ahead, if your doctor feels like it's okay that you you are not going to be tested for 6 or 8 weeks or 3 months or 2 weeks or whatever it is. Let's do what we can do, and I'll show you what I've got available in my medicine bag, my toolbox. Okay. So left brain, pituitary, intracranial pressure, the HPA axis, how those two glands are speaking with your adrenals, which is your two adrenals, which are another set of glands, and your thyroid. So when I was a child and I went to physical exams for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, those things that we do every year before we go to start a new school year. It's been ingrained in us. It's been a habit that we've been told we're supposed to do, is to go get those new vaccines that we're supposed to get, and we go get a physical exam. We get ourselves checked. So we need to know if there's anything going on, the idea being that we catch it early. But when I went to the doctor as a little 5 and 6 and 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old Karen in San Jose, California, my blood pressure and my body temperature were always lower than the expected normal. My Achilles tendon was always slower than what it should have been. And when it comes to that little triangular hammer that they kind of hit on your knee and hit on your arm and hit down there by your ankle, which is your Achilles reflex, that particular one. So how come after all those years when I said, well, what does that mean? And they said, it doesn't really mean anything. Thank God your temperature isn't high, or we'd have to give you a children's aspirin. Thank God that your blood pressure is not really high. I mean, but that's because you're young, and as far as your reflexes, some people are really good and some people aren't. But you see, that left me for all these years to have a thyroid and pituitary and developmental issues that could have been taken care of, but they weren't. So now many times when my clients come, just like my client did 2 weeks ago, and he said he was going for a heart surgery, I said, let me ask you something. When you were real small, did you have a heart murmur? Did the doctors tell you that you were going to just probably grow out of that heart murmur? Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, they did. Okay. And did this and this and this. And come to find out, when I got the hair test back, I knew exactly what was going on. In fact, I'm hoping that that particular anonymous client will have his mother tested, who's also been a client of mine 4 years ago or so. We did probably about 12 sessions through video coaching, which works out really awesome. And she's in New York. And at the time, I would have liked to have also done the hair tissue testing, but it's not something I had brought on as a provider yet. So I'd really love to have that so I can see the multiple generations, because now we've done his son's hair test. We're waiting for it to come back. And I'd love to see if his mother, who also had a massive uterine tumor, also had some mercury poisoning. So you don't see, feel, or hear the mercury. But if you're living in California like I did, it's all around the Almaden Valley. And it has a shelf life of over 10,000 years. And that's because during the gold rush days, people were using mercury to extrapolate the gold so that they could, separate and get the gold. It's been used in research facilities. It's been used in paper mills. It's been used in other factories. And so it could be that it's in your building materials. It could be it's in your air. It could be in your environment in a great many places. So what I wanted to share today was the ripple effect of what happens when so many of our people become predominantly left brain. If we think of right brain as being creative and poetic, musical and artistic, we think of the left brain as like, okay, this is kind of like the balance between the common sense, the analytical. Well, let me sleep on that. No, I want to do it right now. The right brain. No, we're going to sleep on it tonight. So when your hemispheres, both hemispheres of your brain, are communicating and cooperating, you have the potential as in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I was just looking at a notification came in, to be able to make it to becoming self-actualized, to reach your highest potential. You're able then to access and utilize extremely high-level intuitive abilities like I've demonstrated for many decades, most of my life, that honestly, most people would assume might be some kind of a trickery, or how on earth did she do that, right? But I want you to know something. Everyone can do them, or just about everyone can do them. And just about everyone can heal themselves, even if they don't entirely 100% reverse their disease. They might have waited too long, but they can heal themselves to the degree possible. And I've had that happen only a very small one, less than a handful of times in 35 years, where I wish we would have started sooner with someone, or I wish that we would have had sessions more often. But the truth is we need to have your own body reduce any impaired channels of elimination so that you're able to detoxify. So the first thing that I want to do is, out of the 4 steps, is I want to gather information about you through my wellness forum under the coaching tab at naturallywithkaren.com. I want to help you stabilize your energy. So if you're under a great deal of stress and inflammation and pressure in your head and everything else, I want to give you some temporary solutions based on as much as I can get to make sure that we are keeping you absolutely safe. And I'm not playing doctor, over the counter, easy stuff and dietary things to help you so we can get to stage 3, which is detoxification. Now, many, many times you can see it even on the hair test. You can see it in the weight of the person. You can see it in many of the experiences that they're having. But once you start becoming toxic and your thyroid slows down, that's when you're going to experience allergies, asthma, psoriasis. The underpinning was an underfunded body, underfunded energy. Your thyroid has got to bathe every single cell in your body with thyroid hormone. And it can't do that unless you supply what it needs, unless you feed your thyroid. So we're living in a world today where the majority of people are consuming food chemicals, food drugs, denatured food, because we're being pushed and pulled and played with through companies that sell food products. Okay? They sell them because maybe they legit honestly have no idea that they're doing the level of harm that they are. But if you were to go on an extremely strict plant-based diet and then periodically go through some kind of a stress or make a bad decision and eat something that you shouldn't, and you see that immediately your feet start to crack, or immediately you can't breathe so good in your nose, or you wake up in the morning and now you've got those crusty, sleepy eyes in the corner of your eyes, or you wake up and you're like, oh, I just want to stay in bed. I feel like really kind of tired, right? This just happened to me with going through the addiction with a loved one for over 2 years. I got really sloppy in my habits. I was very, very stressed. And it really did a big number to me. And it reminded me, so I'm going to find the good in it, just like making lemonade out of lemons. It reminded me that's how a lot of other people feel every single day. And they never made the association that the brownie, the Mountain Dew, the Diet Coke, the Mac Cafe at McDonald's in the morning because it's cheap and it tastes good and it perks me up to go to work. And after all, I woke up feeling kind of down and tired. The hobbling and the wobbling, the carts full of all the soft drinks. What if I had never put that together? Wouldn't I want someone to come and say, these are sickening you? They're making you ill. They're creating toxicity in your body. Instead of, well, why don't you just eat better? Why don't you just eat healthy? What if I didn't have the capacity to understand what that was? Just like I don't have the capacity to pull out a drill. I'm going to have to force myself and learn how to hang up blinds in my front room because I look at it and I go, oh my God, that is so overwhelming. I don't think I can do that. And it's because there's a program that started when I was a little girl where my father said, don't touch electrical stuff. Just leave it alone. I do that. That's a man's job. Don't touch those things. Or what about another one? Girls don't do science. That's only for boys. Girls don't do math and science. It's only for boys. Well, now this, not girl, but woman, does science. Okay. And I enjoy it. And I've overcome that, just like I will one day with putting the blinds in my front room. If you are really sick and tired of being tired, of feeling like you don't have any energy, of feeling like you have so much undeserved weight gain, like you didn't really even eat that much and you just keep packing on all this weight on your body, undeserved weight gain. So many people in my family are morbidly obese, and I could have been one of them. I've packed on up to 190 pounds on a very small frame, and I was getting up there. Undeserved weight means that you don't have glands and organs and circulation functioning like it should. That's also a facet of your hair tissue testing. Okay. So something in my eye. So I hope that this has been really informative for you. I hope that it kind of takes out some of the, who the heck does she think she is? I'm just an average, ordinary person who went through some experiences and ended up making it a passion of mine for the last 35 adult years to study, read hundreds of books, take courses, and keep searching for the truth. And I care more about healing than I do about treating. I don't want to take medications. That's not for me. Right now, I don't have to take any. I need to make sure that my food is together and that I have a food rhythm, and that I get out and exercise and that I rest, especially if you've been through a lot of stress. You need to rest and get your health back, get your sanity back. So I hope this has been helpful. If you're listening to this, once I get to 1,000 subscribers, which I don't have right now, I think I'm at 345, and I am so thankful for you. Wow. I'm going to be able to take my phone out and go to really cool places that I want to show you and live stream there, but I can't until I have 1,000 subscribers. So if you're watching and you don't normally subscribe, I'm going to ask you if you'd please subscribe. Please like it, because when you like it, if you really genuinely like it, other people go, that's kind of like a form of social proof. I'm going to like it too because that person liked it. So it ends up taking and giving a kind of a social proof for other people that feel really, intimidated to do so. So anyway, that was our live stream. If you're watching this later and you're like, well, I kind of have some questions and they're not like, conducting an entire session, write them down below. And, if they're reasonable, I don't have any problem with coming on. If you're like, I really seriously think I want to get started and, I'm going to fill out your wellness form and click submit, and it goes to my email right on my website, naturallywithkaren.com. You want to get started, really, really invest in yourself. It's $135, postage, hair kit, everything's included. And then you'll either buy the package deal on the shop where you get the consult with it, or once you look at it, you can decide if you want to do a coaching session or not. It's totally up to you. But you will know in that 10 to 12 page report, and it will absolutely be such a bright light shining in on your life, showing you exactly what you need to do. And when mine comes in, I'll live stream about the next one because I will be getting many more. So I want to thank you for joining me, and I appreciate everything. Please like and subscribe and click that bell to the right so you get the notifications every time I'm live. Thank you.